Well, good morning and Shabbat Shalom once again. And once again, it is our privilege to learn Parshat HaShavua, the weekly Torah portion, with our teacher, Rabbi Hillel Silverman. And before we begin, before I introduce Hillel to have him start his teaching, I want to thank you, Hillel, for sharing your Torah with us this year. We've done this now for so many weeks, and you've shown up on time with such wonderful insights week to week. And I just want you to know how grateful our community is, and certainly how grateful I am. So thank you so very much. This week is Parshas Balak, a wonderful story, a mystery, a fascinating story. So tell us what to look for in the Torah this week.
Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom. I love being with you. I love your program. Balak is such an interesting Sedra. At the end of my discussion last week, I alluded to today's portion. But today, I want to amplify it. I want to treat it in depth because there's so much to learn from today's Torah reading. Balak. Balak is the king of Moab. The children of Israel on the border of crossing into the Holy Land. And Balak is the king of Moab. And he is fearful that the children of Israel will enter and destroy him. And so he calls upon a heathen prophet named Balaam, whose specialty is cursing people. And he hires Balaam to curse the Jewish people. And so Balaam begins, but he is unable to curse. Every time he tries to curse the children of Israel, it turns out to be a blessing. 4 times he attempts to curse, but it doesn't work. The first 2 times, nothing happens. And the second 2 times, instead of cursing, he absolutely blesses them. He's on top of the mountain with the king Balak. And Balaam the prophet looks down at the children of Israel in the valley. And he says, Tov, ma tovim, ma tov olecha Yisrael. Ma tovu olecha Yisrael, how good are the tents of Israel down below. How goodly are their dwellings. How goodly are their tents. How beautiful they are. How glorious they are. How impressionable they are. Here is a people he saw down below in the valley that he attempted to curse, and he can't curse them. He blesses them because he sees they live in security and in love and in harmony. And so what happens? He begins to curse them, and he ends in blessing them. Our rabbis tell us that in this section, that the dwellings represent the homes of the Jewish people, and the tents represent the schools. And we have here the 2 pillars of Judaism. The dwellings are the homes of the Jews. And according to our Jewish tradition, the home is so valuable for the survival of our people. The home is called the Mikdash Ma'at. It's the sanctuary in miniature. It's like a sanctuary, the home. The father is like the priest. The mother is the priestess. The children are the communicants. And the table is the altar. The parents are called in Hebrew morim. Morim means teacher, and the parents in the home are the teachers of all that is good, the teachers of faith and love and sacrifice and integrity and moral living. There is so much religion in the Jewish home. The Jewish holidays are in the home. The Sabbath is in the home. Prayers are in the home. The Seder is in the home. Purim is in the home. We recite blessings over the food in the home. How goodly are your homes according to our rabbis. There's so much for the teaching of homes. The second teaching is how goodly are your tents. According to the rabbi, the tents are the schools. The tents are learning, one of the pillars of Judaism. We are always told there is nothing more important than learning. Neged keneged kulam. Study of the Torah is the most important of the Jewish activity. I remember years ago in my first pulpit in Dallas, we brought the famous operatic tenor Richard Tucker to sing at a concert on behalf of our synagogue in our sanctuary. Richard Tucker, whom I knew well, was a cantor in Brooklyn and became a great tenor. And it was a Saturday night. He began the festivities with chanting the beautiful Havdalah. You never heard such a glorious Havdalah. And then he sang something that our congregation was not familiar with. Elu Devarim. In the prayer book, Elu Devarim is one of the early prayers. These are the things that man can eat the fruit thereof, but in the next world, he eats the fruit thereof. He eats of these delicacies in this world, but he enjoys the fruits or the interest, as it were, in the next world. And what were they as he began to sing? Kaved et avicha v'yetivecha. Honor your father and your mother. So important. Good deeds, chasadim tovim, prayer, hospitality, visiting the sick, honoring the departed, bringing peace one to the other. But the most important of all is Talmud Torah. These are the basic teachings in this prayer of the Jewish religion, the ethics and morality that are taught in the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Midrash, in all of rabbinic literature. If I may be personal for a moment, when I was a student at the Jewish Theological Seminary, my Bible teacher said to me, you know, if you study 2 chapters of the Bible every day, the Nach, meaning the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, the second and third sections of the Bible, the prophets and the writings, 2 chapters a day, he said. And of course, you will be studying the Parsha of the week, the center of the week. If you do that for 1 year, you will actually complete a reading of the entire Bible. And I took him seriously, and I said, that was a real challenge. I think I'll do it. And believe it or not, I did it. I completed the entire Bible with commentary in the Hebrew, with commentary in 1 year. And I enjoyed it so much, I said to myself, I'll continue next year to go through the Bible every morning, 2 chapters a day, which I did. And I continued to do it, believe it or not, until 10 years ago. I became a little older. 2 chapters a day was a little much for me. And so I went to 1 chapter. But over the years, I have gone through the Bible 70 times. 70 times. Every morning when I get up, the first thing I do is put on my tefillin, say my prayers, and study the Bible. My children and now my grandchildren observe me doing it. And it's a wonderful thing. And I must tell you that every time I study the Bible and go through the Bible, I discover that I learn something new. There was always a new insight. There is no something new to learn from this amazing contribution to literature. Talmud Torah keneged kulam. There is nothing more important than study according to our religion. The 2 pillars, home and the studying. When I graduated the seminary, I was told that they were offering a doctorate, a DHL. I wanted to take a pulpit, but my mother convinced me, do it now. It'll take another 3 years, You'll study, you'll get your doctorate, and then you can go on and assume a pulpit. And so I did. I finished my doctorate, and one of the proudest days of my life was I received that doctorate, because at the same time, my father, alav shalom, received his doctorate from the seminary in American Jewish history. I was in the Marine Corps at the time as a chaplain, and my most prized possession is a photograph of Dr. Louis Finkelstein, the chancellor of the seminary, presenting a doctorate to my father and to me at the same time. Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. When I was at the seminary, I became very friendly with a student, by the name of Sidney Morgenbesser. I still remember his name because he was one of the most brilliant students that I've ever met. He knew everything, philosophy and history and psychology and science. And I spent a great deal of time with Sidney Morgenstein. And I was I remember a student at Yale, a senior, when as a part-time chaplain at Yale was Sidney Morgenbesser. And we became very friendly. And I recall so well that I wanted him to meet my parents, and my parents to meet him. So I brought him on a train from New York to Hartford, Connecticut. And on the train, Sidney kept reading a book. I was kind of amazed. When he came for the weekend, most of the day he was reading a book. He was studying. And he said to me, I get very nervous when I don't read a book. Some people need for relaxation, smoking, some for drinking, some for dancing. I read. I'm nervous unless I read. He gave the sermon that Friday night to my father's congregation. And I must say he spoke so rapidly that no one understood him. But his love of learning impressed me so much. At Yale, once a month, he gathered together professors of philosophy and history. I remember it was Professor Hegel, Professor Calhoun, and he invited me to one of the sessions. All of these great professors, and there were only professors there, were debating and arguing. And I remember distinctly one professor, Ernst Cassirer. I don't think you may have ever heard that name, but he was a brilliant philosopher. It was in the middle 40s, and he was a Jewish refugee from an elite family. And I can still see him in that group of professors, a handsome man with white hair, and spoke so gently and lovingly and kindly. And here I was with a group of great intellectuals and great philosophers, due to my friend Sidney Morgenbesser. I once showed my friend Sidney a paper that I wrote talking about the survival of Judaism. My thesis, which was fallacious, if there will continue to be anti-Semitism, then Jews will continue to survive. We survive because of the challenge of anti-Semitism. That was my rather naive thesis. And Sidney laughed. He thought it was so funny, and he complimented me again and again. He became a very, very well-known professor at Columbia University. Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Nothing is more significant than the study of Torah. I was very fortunate. I was the author of 10 different books. They were never bestsellers, but I enjoyed very much writing them, and they were read by people. 2 of them were sermons, Sabbath evening sermons and high holiday sermons, all of them based on passages in the Bible. My favorite book was from week to week, which was a collection of of passages from the Bible. There are each parsha of the week, and there are 50 or 52, 53 different sections. I suggested 4 different sermons. And I'm sure that this book, From Week to Week, which contains 200 sermons, semi-sermons, were used by rabbis and by teachers and by scholars. I remember a long time ago, in the 1960s, I received a telephone call from the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. It was the chief of naval operations. And he said to me, I'm going to provide for every library and every ship and every library on every naval installation a book by a Catholic, by a priest, by a rabbi, and by a minister on their religion. And I read your book, believe it or not, from week to week, and I want to order 1,000 copies and place them on ships and naval stations. I said, you don't have to purchase them. I'll be very happy to contribute them. He said, oh, no, you're talking to the United States Navy. We will purchase them if it's all right with you, which, of course, I said is all right. And I still have a dream that as Navy ships are floating in the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean, that in their ship's libraries has a copy of my book From Week to Week. I go back to my 2 pillars that I was talking about, the great pillars of the home and the pillar of study. The interesting aspect of this verse from the Bible that I'm talking about, Tovim, happy are the happy are the tents of Jacob and the dwelling places of Israel are found in the Hebrew prayer book. Happy, good, believe it or not, the first prayer in every prayer book that we enter a synagogue, we recite that prayer. How goodly are the tents of Jacob. How goodly are the tents of Jacob, written by a non-Jew, preached by a heathen prophet. Isn't that amazing that the Jewish people would place in their Siddur, in their Machzor, in the prayer book, the words of a non-Jew? I think that speaks very well for the liberalism of the Jewish people, for the Jew who is willing to learn from all people, from the pluralism of the Jewish people. There was so much fanaticism in the world today. There was so much prejudice in the world today, racism. I can see the faces of the people on January the 6th who confronted the Washington, D.C. Capitol, the insurrection, the hatred in their eyes. Do you remember that? As they climbed the walls, as they entered, as they destroyed property, as they fought with the police, so much hatred. It would be well for the world to take the example of Jewish people and be able, in their liberality, to place in their prayer book as the first prayer in the service, Ma Tovu Oalecha. How goodly are the tents of Jacob, your dwelling places of Israel. Shabbat Shalom. Amen.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Thank you for sharing your insights once again and your wonderful experiences in all the years as a teacher and a rabbi in the community. And I want to wish you a very, very pleasant summer. That we're going to have a summer hiatus following this, and we'll be back in August, of course, to learn together some more. So, Rabbi, a good summer to you, a good Shabbos to you, and Matovu Ahalecha Yaakov. May your tents and your homes always ring with the sound of Torah. Stay well.
Shabbat Shalom.